Hi everyone, it's Caris. Today I thought I would quickly talk to you about the books I read in the first half of the year, so January through to the end of July. Basically just for the sake of completeness, I'm planning on doing an August wrap up and then hopefully wrap ups every month going forwards. So I thought it would make sense to talk about the books that I read in the first 6 months of the year. So I'm actually on track to read 5, maybe even 6 books in August, and I've only got 7 to talk about from the first half of the year, so that just shows how much of a backseat my reading took throughout the first half of the year. But I'm glad that I'm resolving that now and really getting back into reading loads of great books again. So yeah, I'll just get into talking about each of the 7 things. I'll put the pictures of them all up on screen somewhere here because I don't actually have any of them with me. I took them all back to my parents' house when I went back there, and yeah, they're there now, so I don't have them to show, but I'll put the picture up somewhere, and I'm gonna like refer to Goodreads so that I can remember what rating I actually gave them. So the first book I read this year I started on the 1st of January, and it took me quite a long time to read, and that was Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. I've never actually read this book before, but I was really keen to read it because I was really desperate to go and see the film, which by the way I loved. Oh, just it was so well done, and I'll definitely want to see it again at some point. So I gave this a 4 stars overall, but I found the first half so much more enjoyable than the second half. I really loved it when they were kids, and then when they got a bit older I wasn't so bothered. And I've had this in more classic books before. I think in Jane Eyre I really loved the bit when she was younger, which is very different to a lot of people's opinions, I know. And then the second bit I wasn't so bothered about, even though that's where most of the story is. I don't know, I just loved reading about their childhood and that sisterly bond, which was still there throughout adulthood, but obviously they were separate, living their separate lives, so that was different. And also I think because I actually didn't finish it before I saw the film, I'd read about half of it, and then I saw the film, so I knew what happened and I knew like how things were going to pan out. I think that really slowed me down from reading it as well, but I'm glad that I did read it and I would definitely recommend it. I'm not sure if I'll pick up the other books that follow on from this because they do focus obviously more on the characters as adults, I think Jo in particular, so I'm not sure. Maybe one day I'll get to them, but they're not top of my list. In terms of characters, I really loved Amy, which I feel again is like controversial. People hate on Amy and I really liked her in both the book and the film. Like, I understand why people find her annoying, but I feel like there's a deeper layer to her character, and I really liked how that was explored in the film and how she was presented in the book as well. So she'd probably be my favourite, but I also really like Jo. So the next thing that I read, which I actually didn't start until lockdown, so yeah, I had a few months off from reading. In April I finally picked up Pretending by Holly Bourne. I actually listened to this on audio. I've done a lot of craft projects throughout lockdown, starting with painting by numbers, but I also got really into cross stitch and doing my own embroideries. I was listening to this when I was doing that because obviously you can't read and sew at the same time. Holly Bourne is one of my auto-buy authors, but I think I definitely prefer her YA stuff to both of her adult books that I've read. If you were around on my channel before, you'll know how much I used to rave about the Spinster Club trilogy. It's still one of my all-time favourite series of books. This book is basically about pretending to be something or someone that you're not, and it follows a main character called April who tries to reinvent herself to fit in with her idea of what she thinks is the sort of woman that every man wants, which obviously is very problematic. I think it is acknowledged in the book that this is a very problematic idea. She basically creates this whole character for herself called Gretchen and begins dating under this disguise, I guess. April also works for a charity, I believe it's the women's charity. There are definitely themes and quite graphic mentions in this book of rape and sexual assault and violence towards women. I do remember that, and that does play a part in the storyline for April's own character as well. Overall, I think I did like the book, and what I will say is Holly Bourne, she always creates really readable characters and you just want to keep reading on, and especially listening to the audiobook, it sounded like I was inside April's mind and you really understood why she was doing the things that she did, even though they might be totally wrong. However, thinking back to the ending, I feel like I had a few issues with the way that this was resolved, which I'm not going to go into because I can't really remember the details anymore. I'm a bit hazy on that, and also I don't want to give spoilers. So the next book that I read in April or May, I think, and that is The Love and Lies of Rukhsana Ali by Sabina Khan. I was quite disappointed by this one, and according to Goodreads I gave it a 2 stars. I will say I did enjoy the plot. and the topics, and I really appreciate that a book like this exists. So it's basically about a girl called Rukhsana who is from a quite strict Bangladeshi family. She has a girlfriend, but she's not out to her parents, and one day her mom finds her kissing her girlfriend, and then she basically flies Rukhsana along with her parents. They all fly out to Bangladesh, and then her parents try and enter her into the world of arranged marriages and try to set that up for her so that she can marry a boy. She's also got plans to go off to college in the States, but that's sort of jeopardized by this as well. So it's all about that struggle that Rukhsana faces, the conflict between her family, who she obviously loves very much, and also her identity and what she wants for herself in life. I did find the topic really interesting. Obviously this is something that does happen. I just couldn't really get into the writing style, and I didn't feel like the characterization was that great. It was a bit one-dimensional for me. I didn't really find myself invested in the relationship between Rukhsana and her girlfriend either. Obviously the story of Rukhsana's own personal struggle was more important than the relationship itself, but I did feel like the relationship could have been drawn out a lot more, and I feel like there was a couple of really tragic things that happened in this book towards the end that I just didn't feel like heartbroken over, which when you think about what they actually were, I should have been. But yeah, I think that's just my own personal preference in terms of writing. Okay, next is going to prove how little I've read, because 3 of these books are graphic novels and I read them over the course of like one afternoon, but I did love all of them, and those are the 3 books from the Heartstopper series by Alice Oseman. So this currently only has 3 volumes out, but I believe there are going to be more in the future, and there's also a colouring book version of this out now as well, I think. So this is the story of Nick and Charlie, who are featured briefly in Solitaire because Charlie is Tori, the main character in Solitaire's brother, and it just follows their relationship. These books took me on a really cute journey, reading them all in quick succession, because you got to see the forming of the relationship and then them becoming a certified couple, and then in the 3rd volume, I think it was the 3rd volume, towards the end anyway, they go to Paris as part of a school trip, which was really cute to see a different setting as well. And now they're starting to introduce different topics into the books, and also lots of different side characters. The side characters in this series are so great as well. The comic is actually updated by Alice online, so I know I could read ahead, but I think I like waiting and reading it in the graphic novel form in a book. So I'm going to wait for the next volume, but I'm really excited in seeing what happens next. And the last thing that I read in the first half of 2020, I told you it wasn't going to be a very long wrap up, was The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. This was a reread for me. I've read it a few times before, and no surprise, I gave it 5 stars. I loved it. So I read it in anticipation of reading A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which I actually still haven't read yet, so I was a bit premature on the reread because I read it probably June or July now. But I do intend on rereading Catching Fire and Mockingjay, and then eventually getting to The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes maybe in September. Gonna see how it goes, because I've bought quite a few books recently that I really want to get to soon. I've started to feel that like buzz again when there's so many things that you actually want to read, which is something that I hadn't felt for quite a while. So yeah, I'm sure everyone knows the story of The Hunger Games, so I'm not going to go into it, but I'm really glad that it has once again stood the test of time, and I did really enjoy reading it. And I actually do credit this a little bit for kickstarting my reading again in 2020, because I think sometimes you just need to return to an old favourite, and this is the book that got me into YA to begin with. This and like The Fault in Our Stars, I would say, because I read them around the same time, and they really introduced me into all the different angles of YA. And I'm glad that now I've reread it, I seem to be getting back into reading just in general again, so that's really great. So those are all of the things that I've read so far this year. As I said, I've already read almost this many books in August alone, so I will be doing monthly wrap-ups from now on, not just one every 6 months. We love to see it. If you've read any of these books, let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on them, or if you've got any recommendations for me based on the ones that I said I liked here, then I'd love to hear that as well. Other than that, I hope you're all staying safe and keeping well, and I will see you again really soon for a new video. Bye!